Have you ever wondered what might have happened to professional wrestling had TNA not spiraled down the rabbit hole the way that it did? Would they have risen to become legitimate competition to Vince McMahon and the WWE? Yeah, sometimes I wonder about that myself. And that's where we are today, because I've discovered a great new gem to help me realize what might have happened had, well, maybe I've been making decisions in TNA, for better or worse, around the time that they started their transgression down the rabbit hole. Pro Wrestling Simulator is a text-based game that allows you to take control of a wrestling promotion. Now, you can either use the default one that comes with the game, or you can get online and find mods to play whatever different era of pro wrestling you're looking at. For me, one of the things that I love about pro wrestling is going back in time and answering what-if questions. And so when I saw a database for around 2007, I knew exactly what I had to do. No, not go back and save the ECW reboot. Nobody wants that. I'm talking about instead saving a different company, TNA Wrestling. People forget, but at the time, TNA in 2007 was going to be considered legitimate competition for WWE in a few years had they continued along the trajectory that they were on. They had just gotten Kurt Angle to jump over not too long ago, and Christian Cage just before that. They had some great matches for what was at the time the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, and they had a number of promising young stars who did actually turn out to be main eventers, like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. But then they started to bring in too much old guard. They brought in a few cancers to the locker room, and as we all know what happened, it went downhill. But that didn't have to be the case. And I love games like Pro Wrestling Sim because they let you go back in time and rewrite history. So today, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Pro Wrestling Sim, and allow me to introduce you to my journey of trying to save 2007 TNA. This is TNA, an alternate reality story. Now, allow me to preface with one little bit of information. Things happen in this game that are outside of your control. The other agencies and companies, they move around you as you interact with the game. Certain people can do certain things. And so every single thing that you see is not entirely my decision. Sometimes my booking was overwritten by people with creative control, Jeff Jarrett. Other times my booking went unhinged and it took off, and sometimes it floundered. And I'm going to take full responsibility of that, but when I started this mode, my intention was to have fun with it, to write stuff that I would have liked to have seen, to write stuff that I would have enjoyed watching, and to try to continue to tell consistent, well-told wrestling storylines that not only build up the future talent, but showcase what we have right now. But again, because you're dealing with so many outside forces, unexpected things may happen. And that's exactly how this started out for me. Because one of the first things that transpired in this game was that TNA came under new ownership. And of all of the people in the entire game that I thought might be the one to buy TNA, no, it wasn't Jim Cornette. No, it wasn't Vince McMahon. No, it wasn't Paul Heyman or Eric Bischoff forming some sort of consortium to take over. Of all of the names that could have taken over TNA, I got perhaps one of the most unexpected, interesting names that actually allowed me to create a really cool scenario in my company. And I'm going to tell you about that in just a second, so stay tuned. It was only my second day of booking TNA when I got the email in my inbox letting me know that TNA was now under the ownership of Sean O'Haire. Now, some of you may remember Sean O'Haire, some of you may not. If you do, you know that Sean O'Haire was probably most famous for his time in WCW. He also did a little bit of work for WWE during the Invasion angle and was part of the roster for a while afterwards, although he never really took off. However, in the early 2000s, Sean O'Haire was actually almost given a really cool gimmick, and elements of this can still be seen on YouTube to this very day. He almost underwent a character known as the Devil's Advocate. And the idea of this character was that he was going to go around telling people to do the things that made them feel good, even if they might be immoral, such as cheating on your spouse, doing drugs, not paying your taxes, and so on and so forth. And he would end each one of these vignettes with the sentence, "I'm not telling you anything you don't already know." So I asked myself, well, if Sean O'Haire is going to be my owner and now he's a personality on my roster, can I use this? How do I put this guy on my show? And it kind of came to me. If I sort of took some elements from that devil's advocate, the sophistication, the intelligence, the wiseness, and I combined that with this sort of gothic persona that Sean O'Haire has always taken on, at least in WWE, could I create this sort of Matrix Merovingian character where a dark, gothic, intelligent, overseeing owner was present on your weekly television, and do it in a way where not only is it not insulting to the viewer, but it doesn't overshadow the rest of the show? And so that is the Sean O'Haire that you're going to see on TNA moving forward in this series, is an owner who is a bit dark, a bit creepy, but overall an interesting, intelligent character who seeks to create a new dawn in Impact Wrestling. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some of the notable things that are going to be different between real TNA and my TNA. So we start with the one that we just discussed, which is Sean O'Haire being the new owner of TNA. No longer under the control of Jeff Jarrett, now under the control of Sean O'Haire. As well, major free agent signings are going to shape this universe, including one major name who's going to change the landscape and the complexion of TNA and perhaps pro wrestling forever, as well as a plethora of developmental talent whose goal will be to become the future faces of TNA. Now, obviously, the old guard in TNA has a bit of a problem with this. Names like Kevin Nash, for example, and some of the behind-the-scenes people, the office people, also didn't take kindly to either new ownership or a new direction for TNA. And some people walked out on me. We'll get to that. We also started a brand new show which airs once monthly, and it is dedicated to the rising talent. So we created a sort of mini NXT, for lack of a better description, if you will. And finally, just a reminder that this is now a fictional universe. This is the divergence in the timeline. So some of the things that happened in real life may not happen in this particular mode. For example, some people who died, like Sean O'Haire, for example, might not die. Some people who live might actually come to die, and it's not all death related. Certain people might get arrested or might not get arrested. Certain people might not rise to the top of other promotions and may not become major household names. Companies might fold that stayed in business. Other ones might pop up over time. You can't exactly know what's going to transpire, so don't expect your favorite professional wrestling moment to take place, especially if it took place in TNA, because within 2 months of this being a thing, my roster and the real roster started to look very different. But let's get into that free agent signing. Who was the man that Sean O'Haire brought in to become the face of his company? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. In this timeline, there is no UFC, there is no Dana White, there is only the Beast incarnate in TNA. After a brief bidding war with the WWE for Brock Lesnar's services, he signed a 1-year, $200,000 contract to come to TNA. And immediately he made an impact, but you'll see that impact when we recap our first pay-per-view for Impact Wrestling. Brock Lesnar came to TNA. Obviously, this is a bit of a historical divergence, but Lesnar in TNA in 2007, had this actually happened, might have been absolutely meteoric. Would it be as big as he is today? Probably not, but hey, you never do know. But of course, this was just one of the things that changed in Impact, and we've got more to talk about. As is often the case when a company undergoes new management, there are a lot of people who are not happy. And given the nature of sort of the turnover of when new people take over, sometimes it opens the door for people to see their way out. That was very much the case in my TNA universe, because When Sean O'Haire took over and Brock Lesnar came in, a handful of people, both talent and staff, saw the writing on the wall that their time in TNA was coming to an end, and I had a mass exodus. Some people asked to leave, some people were fired, and some people were kept on the roster just until their contracts ran out but were told to go home. And this was quite a few names, including talent like Chris Harris, who, while never became a major player in TNA, did sniff that opportunity quite a few times. And it also included names like Bob Backlund, Jerry Jarrett, Hector Guerrero, and a lot of other backstage behind-the-scenes producer talent. Now, this put Sean O'Haire in quite a pickle because all of a sudden he's got to assemble a brand new front office to run this show, and he's going to have to replace some of the talent that just walked out the door. However, between myself and Sean, we came up with a new front office and a new roster that we think was going to blow the socks off of the audience. Let's take a look at that front office next. Now, Sean had to open up the checkbook a little bit to get some of the names that he did, but he did pull in quite a few interesting names. Now, among the people who stayed on our roster were names like Dutch Mantell, Dixie Carter, Scott D'Amore, and Road Warrior Animal, who were all working backstage behind the scenes for us before Sean O'Haire bought the company. But he opened the checkbook and brought in some awesome names. He got me 2 assistants. You may know them from their in-ring time as D'Lo Brown and Ivory. They now help me with the booking of week-to-week Impact Wrestling operations. But he also brought in someone you might know as Amy Dumas, otherwise known as Lita. And her role is very specific. She will split time between occasionally being an on-screen character, a wrestler, and a personality, but also she'll be helping Dixie Carter create a new division in Impact in TNA called the Knockouts Division. Now, she is working with Dixie to create a brand new title for the show, and I'm hoping to get that to our audience as soon as possible because I do believe the women in pro wrestling need a renaissance. It is unfortunate the state of women's wrestling right now, but with this new front office that Sean has put in place for us, I think we're going to be able to do some great things. But I also want to stress to you guys, it's not just the front office that's getting a makeover. We need to take a look at some of the talent and some of the idea that Sean O'Haire and I think would be wise to bring in, and some names that we got under contract for you. So let's take a look at that. Now, the key to any wrestling promotion that plans to stick around and become a name in the future is you have to bring in the next generation of guys and girls that can lead a company. And we had a few names in our system currently, names like Lance Hoyt and Roderick Strong, who we thought, maybe we could turn them into something one day, but we didn't feel like the depth was there. So we went out and we scouted for a little while, and we brought back some scouting reports, and we took a look at some names we really liked, and we came up with a handful, and we added 5 wrestlers to our developmental division, so to speak. And those names include Austin Creed, Johnny Gargano, Leva Bates, Rebecca Knox, and Mercedes Martinez. Now, we don't know what the future has in store for these 5 competitors, but we'd like to think with the proper training and the proper development, we can really make household names out of these guys. And it's very possible that those 7 names could end up being the face of our company one day. There's no guarantee, but there's always opportunity, and that's what you're looking for. And that's actually why we created the next thing that we created, which is called Impact Rising, which is a once monthly show that will stream free on TNA.com, TNAwrestling.com. And it will feature all of this young talent, as well as giving them the opportunity to work with some of the established guys like Kurt Angle or maybe even Brock Lesnar, who knows. So if you're a fan of young upcoming wrestling talent, then you're going to want to check out TNA Impact Rising, which you will see as part of this series as well. And that's really the major differences that are going to take place here, is that our universe is going to be more focused on some younger talent, as you can see. So there you have it. That will be the major differences between the real TNA and our TNA here in this game. I hope you guys are going to look forward to seeing what I do with Impact Wrestling and the storylines that we create and the content that we're able to produce. And maybe, just maybe, in this universe, TNA will stick around and become something great. So thank you for checking out our introductory video here on Impact Wrestling in our Pro Wrestling Sim, our TNA and alternate reality story. If you guys like what you see, and if you think you guys are going to like what you see, then stay tuned, because I will be releasing episodes of this periodically as we book shows and as we do things. So for now, I am Swerve. Thank you guys for checking us out here on the Sons of War YouTube channel, and I hope you look forward to watching more Pro Wrestling Sim, TNA Wrestling, an alternate reality story. Take care, everyone.